All the men fell for the gay mafia boss in his club, except the black bartender he really wanted. The nights at the Obsidian pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the concrete ribs of New York City. Neon lights cut through the haze, washing velvet booths and crystal glasses in shades of feverish pink and smoke blue. The bass from the speakers vibrated in the floorboards, mixing with the laughter of the city's elite. Every soul there came chasing something: power, thrill, or the illusion of love. At the center of that storm sat Dante Moretti, untouchable and impossibly calm. He was the heir to a dynasty that quietly ruled half the city's underworld, a man who didn't have to speak to be obeyed. He possessed the kind of dangerous Italian elegance that made the air thin around him. One look from his dark, heavy-lidded eyes made the crowd orbit him like planets around a sun they feared to touch. Men hovered close, beautiful men in tailored suits and unbuttoned silk shirts, their smiles too bright, their laughter too loud, each one hoping to be chosen. They postured and preened, eyes hungry for a fraction of Dante's attention. But Dante barely noticed. Power was routine. Attention was exhausting. Then there was Marcus Thorne. 3 months behind Dante's bar, and the man hadn't given the boss so much as a real glance. Marcus slid between customers with effortless grace, his hands creating art from bottles and light. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark skin that glowed under the club's ambient lighting. His eyes were cold, measured, and indifferent. Not flirtatious, not afraid, just focused. His silence tore through the noise more loudly than any music Dante owned. Dante told himself it was annoyance, felt a lot like fascination. The first time Dante actually watched him work, really watched him, something tightened in his chest. Marcus moved with a precision that bordered on violence. Sharp turns, decisive pours, brutal efficiency. No wasted motion, no performance, just raw competence that made everyone else look like they were trying too hard. Dante had hired him because the club manager said he was the best mixologist in Manhattan. Not the friendliest, not the most charming, but the best. Dante had learned long ago that excellence was the only currency that never depreciated. What the manager hadn't mentioned was Marcus's absolute refusal to play the game everyone else in the Obsidian lived by. 3 months, and Marcus still treated him like a stranger. Like Dante's name wasn't etched into FBI files and whispered in fear throughout the 5 boroughs. Like the gun beneath his tailored Brioni jacket was invisible. That night, Dante sat at the bar instead of his usual VIP booth. The section emptied instantly as his entourage followed, standing at a respectful distance. Whispers rippled through the club. Why was Dante Moretti sitting at the bar? What was happening? Whiskey. Neat. Dante's voice was soft, almost gentle, the kind of gentle that preceded violence. Marcus glanced at him once, expression unchanged. Any preference?
Surprise-me.
Marcus turned away, selecting a bottle without hesitation. No nervousness, no trembling hands. When he set the glass before Dante, his eyes finally met the boss's fully. Yamazaki 18. Japanese, not Italian or American. But you strike me as someone who appreciates precision over patriotism. Then he moved away, attending to other customers, leaving Dante with a glass and an observation that cut too close to the truth. Dante sipped slowly, watching him over the rim. The whiskey was perfect, smoky, complex, uncompromising, just like Marcus's choice. For the first time in years, Dante felt something like curiosity stir beneath his ribs. In a life where everyone was either predator or prey, Marcus Thorne seemed to exist outside the food chain entirely. The next night, Dante returned to the bar. The gleaming black surface reflected the neon above, transforming ordinary movement into an underwater ballet. Marcus moved through it all like a creature born to darkness, completely in his element while remaining utterly separate from it. His white shirt was crisp against his dark skin, a silver watch catching the light as he poured, mixed, and created. Always in motion, never rushed. Always surrounded, never touched. "How long have you been in New York?" Dante asked when Marcus passed by to grab a garnish. 2 years, Marcus replied. No honorifics, No, sir, or boss. Just facts. And before that, New Orleans. He was already moving away, mixing something complicated for a customer down the bar. His voice carried a deep resonance, burying faint traces of southern warmth beneath a layer of city sharpness. It was like honey crystallized into something that could cut. Dante found himself wondering what that voice would sound like, relaxed, unguarded, if it ever was. Around him, Dante's security detail watched with careful neutrality. They never questioned his choices, but he could feel their confusion. The Don at the bar night after night, watching a bartender who showed no interest, it didn't fit the pattern. It disrupted the careful balance of their world where men were either soldiers, enemies, or entertainment. The club's regular patrons noticed, too. Eyebrows raised, whispers spread, and speculation bloomed in dark corners. Was the bartender his new favorite? His latest obsession? Was there a connection they didn't know about? Money exchanged hands in quiet bets about how long before Marcus ended up in Dante's bed or disappeared completely. Dante let them wonder, let them whisper. Their speculation was meaningless background noise to the far more interesting puzzle before him. One night, a group of investment bankers took seats at the bar, already drunk from a dinner elsewhere. Expensive watches, designer suits, and the casual cruelty of men who believed money excused behavior. One of them leaned too close to Marcus as he served their drinks. "Where'd Moretti find you?" the man slurred, his voice carrying just enough to reach Dante's ears. Didn't know the Obsidian was importing help from the ghetto these days. Marcus's expression didn't change. Not a flicker, not a flinch. He simply placed the man's drink down with precise force, just hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim onto the banker's expensive cuff. "Apologies," Marcus said, his voice flat. Hand slipped. The banker's face darkened, his ego bruised. "You little piece of problem," Dante interrupted, his voice carrying despite its softness. The table froze. The banker paled, suddenly remembering whose club he sat in, whose air he breathed. He looked from the bartender to the man in the impeccably tailored suit at the end of the bar. "No, Mr. Moretti. Just a small spill," the banker stammered. "Then I suggest you clean it up and apologize to my head bartender for your carelessness." The command hung in the air, absolute. The man stammered an apology that Marcus didn't even acknowledge, continuing his work as if the man didn't exist. Later, when the club had emptied and the cleaning staff worked in silence, Dante found Marcus counting bottles in the storeroom, a clipboard in hand. "You didn't need to intervene," Marcus said without looking up. "I handle worse every night." "I know." Dante leaned against the doorframe, studying the line of Marcus's back. "That wasn't for you." Now Marcus looked up, really looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Then what was it for?" "My boundaries," Dante said simply. "Some things aren't tolerated in my club." "Your club?" Marcus repeated the words like they tasted unfamiliar. "Is that what this place is to you? Just territory?" The question caught Dante off guard. No one asked him things like that. Direct, uncalculated questions about how he saw the world. "It's one of many," Dante answered finally. "But yes, territory matters. And people." Marcus's eyes were steady on his. "Are they territory too?" The air between them thickened with unspoken accusations. Dante recognized the challenge in the question, the moral judgment beneath the surface. Most people feared him too much to judge. Most people weren't Marcus Thorne. "People make choices," Dante said quietly. "Territory doesn't." Marcus studied him for a long moment, as if calculating something complex. Then he simply nodded and returned to his inventory. Not agreement, not acceptance, just acknowledgement that he'd heard him. It wasn't enough. For the first time in years, Dante felt the strange discomfort of being dismissed, of being seen but not understood. He left without another word, anger and fascination tangling like smoke in his lungs. The next evening, Marcus wasn't behind the bar. Dante's eyes scanned the club twice before he asked his floor manager. "Day off," came the nervous reply. He requested Thursdays permanently. Dante nodded once, face betraying nothing, but inside something simmered. Marcus was avoiding him, running. The realization should have angered him more. Instead, it only deepened the fascination. People ran from Dante out of fear. Marcus ran from complexity, from conversations that exposed too much, from truth. That night, Dante left the club early. His driver took him through the rain-slick streets to a small, unmarked door in a grittier part of Brooklyn. Inside, a different kind of darkness awaited. Not the manufactured glamour of the Obsidian, but the simple shadow of a neighborhood bar with low lights and worn wood. And there he was, behind a different counter, same precision, same focus, different context. Here, without the Obsidian's opulence surrounding him, Marcus seemed even more substantial, more real. He looked up as the door closed behind Dante, and for a split second, genuine surprise cracked his composure. Then the mask returned, smooth and impenetrable. "We close in 20 minutes, Marcus said when Dante took a seat at the bar. "Then I'll have something quick." The few remaining patrons glanced nervously between them, sensing the tension crackling in the air. One by one, they finished their drinks and left until only silence remained. "How did you find me?" Marcus asked finally, wiping down the already clean bar. "I own buildings. You sign leases." Dante shrugged slightly. "New York is smaller than it seems. And what brings the city's most notorious businessman to a neighborhood dive bar on a Thursday night?" Curiosity, the truth slipped out before Dante could shape it into something more strategic. "You work for me 6 nights a week, but request Thursdays off to work somewhere else." "Why?" Marcus set down his towel, facing him directly. "Because this place is real. The people are real. They drink because they're happy or sad or tired, not because they're playing power games or hunting status. And they see me as a person, not as—" He trailed off. "Not as what?" Dante pressed. "An accessory, a piece of the environment, a prop in someone else's story." The bitterness in his voice was sudden and sharp. Dante absorbed the accusation silently. Was that how Marcus saw his position at the Obsidian? As a prop. "You're more than that," Dante said finally. "Am I?" Marcus's laugh was short, humorless. "You don't even know me." "I'd like to." The words emerged unbidden, honest in a way Dante rarely allowed himself to be. Marcus stilled, studying him with those penetrating eyes. "Why? What could you possibly want from someone like me?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. What did he want? Sex? Power? The thrill of conquest? Those were the currencies his world traded in. But sitting here in this simple bar with its scarred wood and honest shadows, those answers felt hollow. "Authenticity," Dante said finally. "In my world, it's rare." Something flickered across Marcus's face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He opened his mouth to respond when his phone buzzed loudly on the counter. Glancing at the screen, his expression hardened. "I have to lock up now." The moment had passed, the wall rebuilt. Dante nodded, leaving a stack of cash on the bar that would cover every patron's tab for the night. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. "The Obsidian isn't all games and illusion," he said quietly. "Some things there are real, too." Marcus didn't answer, already turning away to close the register. Dante left without looking back, the night air cool against his face. Something had shifted between them. Not broken, not yet connected, but changed. The next night, Marcus returned to the Obsidian, professional as always. But now, when their eyes met across the crowded room, something new lingered in the glance. A shared secret, perhaps, or a mutual challenge. Weeks passed. Dante continued his silent observation from the bar. Marcus continued his perfect performance behind it. But small changes emerged in their carefully maintained distance. Sometimes Marcus would place Dante's drink before him without being asked, selecting a different rare bottle each night that somehow matched his mood. Sometimes Dante would notice details. A fresh haircut, tired eyes, a barely perceptible stiffness in his shoulders, and ask brief, careful questions that Marcus answered with equal care. They were building something fragile between the cracks of their established roles. Not friendship, not romance. Something unnamed that existed only in glances, in whiskey selections, in the careful measure of personal space maintained between them. The men who had once competed for Dante's attention noticed the shift. Their desperation took on a sharper edge. Colognes became heavier, laughs louder, touches more insistent. As if volume could compete with authenticity. As if persistence could replace what they lacked. The ability to see him as something other than power and wealth wrapped in Italian wool. One of them was distinct, a man named Luca, the son of a prominent city councilman, beautiful and calculating. He approached Marcus at the bar during a quiet moment. "Whatever you think you're doing with Dante, it won't last," Luca said, his voice sweet with poison. "He collects interesting things until they bore him. Then he discards them." Marcus continued polishing a glass, unbothered. "Thanks for the insight." "He's not looking for an equal," Luca pressed, his manicured nails tapping against the bar. "He's looking for a novelty, the stoic bartender who doesn't worship him. Once you break, once you want him back, the game ends." Marcus finally looked at him, really looked, with eyes that had seen too much to be intimidated by pretty cruelty. "Is that what happened to you?" Marcus asked quietly. Luca's face flushed with rage. "You don't know what you're playing with. His world eats men like you alive." Marcus set down the glass, leaning slightly forward. "And men like you? What does it do to them?" The question hung between them, sharp and dangerous. Luca retreated without answering, dignity barely intact. But the encounter left marks, invisible but present. Dante saw everything. He saw how conversations stopped when Marcus approached, how customers made increasingly complicated orders, then complained they weren't right, how other staff began to isolate him, sensing which way the wind blew. One night, after closing, Dante found him alone on the rooftop terrace where employees sometimes took breaks. The city spread below them, a galaxy of lights against velvet darkness. Marcus stood at the railing, shoulders tense, a cigarette burning between his fingers, though he wasn't smoking it, just watching the ember consume the paper. "You don't smoke," Dante observed, joining him at the rail. "I don't," Marcus agreed, watching the cigarette burn. "But sometimes I need to remember what destruction looks like up close." The words carried weight beyond their surface, laden with meanings Dante couldn't fully grasp. "Luca," Dante said after a moment, "what did he say to you?" Marcus glanced at him, surprise flickering across his features. "You saw that. I see everything in my club. Not a boast, a simple truth." Marcus turned back to the city view, dropping the cigarette and crushing it beneath his heel. "Nothing I haven't heard before. People have been telling me to know my place since I was old enough to understand what that meant." The bitterness in his voice cut through the night air, raw and real. Dante felt an unfamiliar urge to comfort, to protect. He suppressed it, knowing Marcus would reject such gestures. "Your place," Dante said instead, "is wherever you decide it should be." Marcus looked at him, eyes seemingly peeling back layers of carefully constructed persona to the man beneath. "Is that what you believe, or what you think I want to hear? Does it matter?" Yes, the single word carried absolute conviction. Truth matters, especially in a world built on lies. Dante considered this, the weight of Marcus's moral certainty against the compromise of his own existence. "Then yes, I believe it. Your place is your choice. That's why you're here. Why I hired you. You don't let others define your boundaries. Unlike everyone else in your world," Marcus said. The accusation hung between them, sharp but not entirely unfair. Everyone in Dante's orbit existed in carefully defined roles. Subordinate, enemy, asset, entertainment. Boundaries enforced by violence, money, or fear. Except Marcus, who carried his boundaries within himself, unshakable and absolute. "Yes," Dante admitted finally, "unlike everyone else." The honesty seemed to surprise Marcus, softening something in his expression. He turned his body fully toward Dante. The distance between them felt charged, the air humming with electricity. "Why do you come to the bar every night, Dante? Why watch me work? Why follow me to Brooklyn? What are you looking for?" The questions tumbled out, released into the night air. Questions he'd been holding back for months. Dante turned to face the city again, finding it easier to speak truth to darkness than to those penetrating eyes. "I don't know," he said simply. "That's what interests me, not knowing. In my life, everything is calculated, measured, known. Risks assessed, outcomes predicted. But you," he paused, searching for words. "You're an equation I can't solve, a variable I can't control. And that makes you the most interesting person in my world." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Marcus was silent for so long Dante thought he might not respond at all. When he finally spoke, his voice carried no judgment, only quiet understanding. "That's a dangerous thing to be in your world. The most interesting person." "Yes," Dante agreed. "It is." They stood close now, the cold wind whipping around them. Dante turned back to Marcus, finding him closer than expected. The heat radiating from Marcus's body was a stark contrast to the chill air. Dante's gaze dropped to Marcus's lips, then back up to his eyes. A silent question. Marcus didn't pull away. He didn't lean in, but he didn't retreat. He held Dante's gaze, his breathing shifting, growing slightly heavier. "Good night, Dante," Marcus whispered, the words sounding like both a greeting and a farewell. As Marcus walked away, Dante remained at the railing, watching the city that belonged to him, yet somehow failed to fill the hollow space expanding in his chest. Then came the night that shattered everything. The obsidian was packed, bodies pressed close in artificial intimacy, music pulsing like a collective heartbeat. Dante sat at the bar, watching Marcus work with his usual precision despite the crush of customers. The air felt electric, charged with something Dante couldn't name. Later, he would recognize it as premonition. His security detail noticed them first. 5 men entering too quickly, moving too purposefully through the crowd. Not customers, not friends, threats. The first gunshot cracked through the music like lightning through clouds. Screams erupted. Bodies surged toward exits. Chaos bloomed instantly, beautiful and terrible in its raw human panic. Dante moved without thinking. He vaulted over the bar as bullets shattered bottles behind him. His hand found Marcus's arm, pulling him down sharply as glass rained around them. Marcus's eyes met his, wide with shock but not blind with panic. "Stay down," Dante ordered, already reaching for the gun holstered beneath his jacket. But Marcus wasn't listening. He was looking past Dante at something on the floor beyond the bar. Following his gaze, Dante saw Toby, the young barback, clutching a bloodied shoulder, exposed in the open service area. Before Dante could stop him, Marcus was moving, crawling low across broken glass toward the injured boy. "Damn it," Dante cursed. He followed, placing his body between the shooters and the bartender, shielding Marcus with his own tailored suit as more shots rang out above them. The irony wasn't lost on him. Protecting someone who didn't want his protection, who had never asked for his involvement. They reached the boy together, pulling him behind the relative safety of the bar's heavy oak structure. Marcus pressed a bar towel against the wound, murmuring reassurances while blood seeped between his fingers. "Keep pressure here," Marcus instructed, guiding Toby's trembling hand to the makeshift bandage. Then he turned to Dante, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Your people, where are they?" As if in answer, return fire erupted from multiple positions throughout the club. Dante's security team, moving with practiced efficiency, began neutralizing the threats. The gunfight was brief, brutal, and decisive. When silence fell again, broken only by whimpers and the distant wail of approaching sirens, Dante knew his side had won. They always did. He looked back at Marcus, expecting fear, shock, the natural human response to violence. Instead, he found him still attending to the injured boy, face composed in grim determination. His hands were covered in blood, yet they didn't shake. "Not your first gunfight," Dante observed quietly. Marcus met his eyes. Something dark and familiar reflected in his gaze. New Orleans wasn't always jazz and celebrations. Understanding passed between them, the recognition of shared wounds, different yet similar. Both shaped by violence they hadn't chosen. Both survivors in worlds that devoured the weak. Hours later, after police statements and paramedic visits, after the club had been cleared and the injured tended to, Dante found Marcus in his office upstairs. Marcus stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, arms wrapped tightly around himself. The blood had been washed from his hands, but something about his posture suggested it still clung to his skin. "You should go home," Dante said from the doorway. "It's been a long night." Marcus turned slightly, his profile illuminated by the city's glow. Who were they? Rivals. Making a statement. Dante stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "It's been handled." "Handled?" Marcus repeated the word flatly. "You mean they're dead?" It wasn't a question, so Dante didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken realities about his world. "Is this what your life is?" Marcus asked finally, turning to face him fully. "Violence and retaliation? Blood and power? An endless cycle of handling things?" His words carried no judgment, only a terrible weariness that matched the hollow feeling in Dante's own chest. For the first time, Dante found himself wanting to explain, to justify. "It's more complicated than that." "Don't lie to me," Marcus raised a hand, stopping him. "Not now. Not after tonight." Dante studied his face, the strength beneath the exhaustion, the clarity in his eyes. Marcus Thorne had looked into the dark heart of the Mafia and hadn't flinched away. But he hadn't embraced it either. "What do you want from me, Marcus?" Dante asked quietly. Marcus laughed, a sound stripped of humor. "That's the question, isn't it? What could I possibly want from New York's most dangerous man?" He shook his head slowly. "Nothing you're willing to give." "Try me." The challenge in Dante's voice surprised them both. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that Dante could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell the faint scent of citrus and copper that clung to him. "I want simplicity," Marcus said, each word precise and heavy. "I want mornings without wondering which of my coworkers might get shot. I want to create beautiful things without blood washing them away. I want a life that's mine, not a decoration in someone else's empire." The truth of his words struck Dante like physical blows, not because they were cruel, but because they were pure. "Then why stay?" Dante asked. "Why work at the Obsidian at all?" Something flickered across Marcus's face, vulnerability quickly masked. "Because I needed the money. Because your club is prestigious. Because mixology is art and you pay for the best." He paused, looking away. "And because I thought I could exist in your world without becoming part of it. I was wrong." Dante felt something cold settle in his chest. He was leaving. "I understand," Dante said, his voice carefully neutral despite the unexpected pain spreading beneath his ribs. "I'll have your final payment arranged." Marcus nodded once, moving toward the door. But he stopped before leaving, turning back with eyes that held too much knowledge. "You know what's sad? For a moment, I thought there might be something real between us. Something honest." He paused. "But how can anything true grow in soil soaked with blood?" He left without waiting for an answer. Days passed. The Obsidian reopened. The damage was repaired. New security measures were implemented. Dante buried himself in business, in the brutal efficiency of running his empire. He hired a new head bartender, skilled, deferential, forgettable. The men returned to his booth, sensing opportunity in Marcus's absence. They offered the same empty flattery as before. Everything returned to normal. Except Dante. The club felt hollow now, its glamour thin and artificial. The whiskey tasted flat. Even the power he wielded felt suddenly burdensome. He found himself driving past the small neighborhood bar in Brooklyn where Marcus had worked Thursdays. It was closed now, A for lease sign hanging in the darkened window. Marcus had disappeared completely. Dante could have found him, of course. His resources were nearly limitless. But something stopped him. Respect, perhaps, or the strange, unfamiliar fear of what he might do if he did find him. 3 months passed. Winter settled over New York, covering the city in a crystalline coldness that matched the hollow feeling in Dante's chest. Then came the invitation. Small, elegant, delivered by courier to his penthouse. The opening of a new cocktail lounge in Chelsea. Exclusive, intimate, focused on craft rather than the scene. The name caught his eye immediately. Thorns. He had done it. Marcus had built something of his own. Away from Dante's shadow, his protection, his world. Pride mingled with pain as Dante ran his fingers over the embossed lettering. The night of the opening, Dante stood outside the small, elegant building. Through the windows, he could see a space that managed to be both sophisticated and welcoming. Warm wood, subtle lighting, jazz playing softly. And there he was, behind the bar again, but different now. There was authority in his posture. This wasn't an employee creating someone else's vision. This was a king in his own realm. Dante almost turned away, almost respected the boundary Marcus had drawn between their worlds. But then Marcus looked up. His gaze found Dante's through the glass, as if he'd been expecting him all along. Time suspended between them. Then Marcus nodded. A slight inclination of his head. An invitation. Dante went inside. The atmosphere enveloped him immediately. Warm, intimate, alive with conversation. No VIP section. No security scanning for weapons. Just people enjoying exceptional drinks. He made his way to the bar, taking the only empty seat. Marcus finished serving another customer before approaching. His expression was composed, but the coldness was gone. Dante. His name in Marcus's voice still carried weight, but without the distance of before. Marcus. Dante glanced around appreciatively. You've built something beautiful. Thank you, simple words. But Dante heard the pride beneath them. What can I get you? Whatever you think is right. Marcus studied him for a moment, then turned to select bottles. His movements were the same, efficient, artistic, but there was an ease to them now. Freedom looked good on him. The drink he placed before Dante wasn't whiskey. It was clear, with herbs floating among perfect ice cubes. New creation, Marcus explained. Gin base, bitter and sweet. Complicated. Dante sipped slowly. The flavors unfolded on his tongue. Complex, challenging, uncompromising. Like its creator. It's perfect, Dante said honestly. A small smile touched Marcus's lips. The first real one Dante had ever seen. High praise from the city's most discerning patron. The air between them had changed. The hostility was gone, replaced by something quieter. Not friendship, not yet, but the possibility of understanding. I heard about your rivals, Marcus said after a moment, leaning against the bar. The news said their organization collapsed. Dante met his eyes steadily. I don't leave threats unaddressed. No, Marcus agreed softly. You wouldn't. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't tense. It was thoughtful. I won't apologize for my world, Dante said finally, but I am sorry you were caught in it. Marcus considered this, fingers tracing patterns on the bar top. I'm not. At Dante's surprised look, he continued. It taught me something important, that I needed to build my own space, my own rules. This place exists because I walked away from yours. Then I'm not sorry either, Dante said quietly. As the night progressed, the crowd thinned. When only a handful of patrons remained, Marcus approached him again. Why did you come tonight? Marcus asked directly. No games. Dante considered lying. But here, in the clean light of Marcus's creation, only truth would suffice. Because I missed you, he admitted. The real conversations, the honesty, the way you saw through everything to what mattered. Something softened in Marcus's expression. I missed aspects of you too, not the danger, but the moments when the mask slipped. When you were just a man asking questions. We exist in different worlds, Marcus continued, voice low. Yours is about power. Mine is about creation. They can't fully coexist, Dante said. But they can intersect. Marcus studied him, his gaze dropping to Dante's lips before returning to his eyes. Intersect how? Like this, Dante gestured between them. Honest conversations.
Real moments. No pretense.
Just two people who see each other clearly. Marcus was silent for a long moment, weighing possibilities against dangers. Finally, he reached for 2 glasses, pouring a finger of the complex gin into each. He slid one toward Dante. 2 intersections, Marcus said softly. Carefully navigated. Dante raised his glass. Carefully navigated. They drank, the liquid warm in their throats. Dante set his glass down, his hand resting on the bar. Marcus hesitated, then placed his hand over Dante's. His skin was warm, his grip firm. Dante turned his hand over, interlocking their fingers. The contact was electric, a grounding force in a spinning world. He leaned forward across the bar, testing the boundary one last time. Marcus didn't pull away. He leaned in, closing the distance until their breaths mingled. This is dangerous, Marcus whispered, his eyes searching Dante's. The best things usually are, Dante replied. He closed the gap. The kiss was slow, tentative at first, tasting of gin and hesitation. Then Marcus sighed into it, his grip on Dante's hand tightening, and the kiss deepened. It wasn't the hungry, desperate kissing of the men at the Obsidian. It was deliberate. It was a claiming not of territory, but of a shared moment in time. When they pulled apart, flushed and breathless, the silence in the bar felt different. It wasn't empty anymore. I have to close up, Marcus said, though he didn't let go of Dante's hand. I'll wait, Dante said. As Dante watched Marcus move to lock the doors, something shifted inside him. The hollow feeling was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. Not peace, his world would never allow for that, but possibility. Marcus Thorne had rejected his empire, but not him. He had drawn boundaries Dante would respect. He had created his own path while leaving a door fractionally open. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a surrender. It was something far rarer in both their lives. It was the truth. And for a man who commanded everything, the freely offered truth from someone who wanted nothing from him was the most precious thing imaginable.